Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the week. You're dumb enough to come back, huh? Well, we're glad to have you. Welcome back to the week 2 edition of the ever popular, ever growing Third and Lang podcast. And we thought for a minute we might have to do this audio only, but when you got a guy this good looking like Matt Lang, that's why video is created, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen.
sure. Thank you very much.
Welcome aboard, Coach Matt Lang joining us, and pal, 1 week in the books. Pretty good weather where I was. Friday night was fantastic. Saturday was a terrific day, and got a lot of good football in. So welcome back.
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting weekend. I think there was a lot of people that were worried about the heat, and then you had some rain that kind of popped up in our area and down here, and so we had some delays. We had some games.
Yeah, I did hear. Yeah, I remember hearing that. Someone saying around like the normal Bloomington area there were thunderstorms. And yeah, we didn't see any of it. So you had some delays, huh?
Yeah, we had some delays in Peoria. Also in Normal, I know Jim Matson out at Peoria WEEK. He was all over the place, and they just did not get a lot of games, really finished with their broadcasts and coverage of your games and stuff like that. Down here in the Bismarck area, Georgetown, Westville, what have you, those games all kind of took place. The Bismarck game that I went to on Friday, it got postponed till Saturday. But there were some delays in terms of the heat, and then the thunder showers kind of popped up on Friday night in some areas. So overall, it was a good Friday and Saturday, and then Saturday kind of cooled down, and those games that got played were good, and we'll talk about one of those games later in the show.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So again, I got out to some games. You got out to some games. I think what we're going to do is we're going to recap week 1, go through 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, and also 8-man, and then we'll come back and talk. There's a couple of things I want to cover. Obviously, the games that we attended, and saw a little bit of good news today that we'll get to towards the end of the podcast. So, Matt, we're going to fire off right now. We're going to start in Class 1A. Of course, I am using the AP polls. So the week 2 AP polls are out. So let's go through 1A, and we'll see what has changed here. So Lena Winslow is still the number one team in Class 1A. Forreston moves up from 4 to 2. Camp Point Central goes from 2 to 3. Okay, so we're just changing points here basically in votes. Belleville-Althoff moves up from 7 to 4. Greenfield Northwestern stays in at 5. Fulton, they drop from 3 to 6. Fulton, of course, with a loss. We'll get into that in a little bit. Kewanee, Weathersfield, they move up a little bit. They're up to 7 in the week 2 poll in Class 1A. 2 new schools in the polls this week, Matt. Sterling Newman, they are in. They get a 12-7 win over Taylor Rock Ridge. So they are in. They are in at number 8. Peru St. Bede, Matt, they get a win, of course, over Tuscola. And again, that was a 34-25 final. And then Dakota still at 10 with a win. So again, Tuscola out at number 6 from last week's poll. As I mentioned, they lost to Peru St. Bede in a game that you mentioned already. And then also number 9, Ottawa Marquette. Unfortunately, Ottawa Marquette got walloped 42-0 Aurora Christian. Uh-oh. Here comes Aurora Christian again, huh?
Yeah, I think anytime you with Aurora Christian, it's going to be the same thing that you see every year. They obviously have a new leadership in that program, but the bottom line is the bottom line. And the bottom line is the product's going to be really, really good.
Yeah, and they're going to throw it a ton. Yep.
They're going to stretch the field. They're going to go vertical. They're going to put athletes in space, and they're going to do a great job. So, tip your hat off to them. However, don't count on Ottawa Marquette. They're always a formidable opponent as the year goes on. They'll do a great job of running, Coach Jobst there with their wing tee, and just their variables that they do with their offense. They'll come back. But obviously, they got a week 1 shellacking there by AC. And so, you move on and you go back to the drawing board.
It's kind of interesting. Aurora Christian gets that big 42-0 win over a ranked team. They only get 4 votes in the 1A poll.
Yeah.
I think there's some people that don't like Aurora Christian voting in the 1A poll.
Yeah.
That's Edgy Tim's take. Just thought I'd throw
sure.
that out there, but I did find that interesting. Others receiving votes in 1A, Rockford Lutheran, again, another program you always need to keep an eye out. Hope Academy, Galena, Aurora Christian, as we mentioned, Carrollton, Tuscola, Melvin, Gibson City, Melvin Sibley, Leroy, and Hardin Calhoun, all getting a vote here too in the AP poll for week 2. Matt?
Just to kind of cover that on the 1A, if I could, I'd like to just send a shout out to the HOIC, Gibson City with a big win. They're a little bit down on their numbers this year. It's kind of maybe you hate to say it's kind of the talk of the town, but there's some kids that didn't go off for football this year in that program. They're used to having a little bit higher numbers. Regardless, we'll move on from that. They got a big win. They beat a Ridgeview team that's young. Matt Barnes takes over for Hal Kyoto at Ridgeview. So that's a big win for Gibson City. I want to send out a little bit of shout out and a little bit of love to BJ Selesnik over there at Leroy. That was a big win for them to beat Central A&M. Central A&M has been a formidable opponent in 1A, and Leroy always schedules tough games over the years in Class 1A. I mean, they're not afraid of anybody. They've taken on the Tolona Unities and the St. Joe's, and they'll go toe-to-toe, and they'll get in a rock fight with anybody, and they win a real close game against A&M. Just want to talk a little bit about that St. Bede outfit. Max Bray at quarterback really put on a show, and then they have to drive on down to take on Tuscola at Illinois Wesleyan, and Illinois, to take on Tuscola and Illinois Wesleyan, and they stretched that game out in the fourth quarter, and they kind of exposed some weaknesses that Tuscola had on defense, and so they end up winning that game 34-25. Max Bray was kind of the star of the game, but Evan Etchison, I think is his last name, had a real big play on defense. So tip your hat off to St. Bede and the Academy for getting that win. And, we'll see what happens the rest of the year. But anytime you can get a big win on a neutral turf, that kind of speaks highly of your program right there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So let's move on to 2A. And polling wise in 2A, there's no change. There's no new teams in the poll. There's been a bunch of movement up and down, but the same 10 teams from last week remain. So this week, here's the order. Maroa Forsyth moves up from number 2 to number 1. That's because previous number 1, Decatur St. Teresa, lost to an out-of-state opponent. We'll cover that in a little bit. Tri-Valley is up to number 2. Athens is up to 3. Seneca. Matt, how big was the win for Seneca over Wilmington, 27-21? I'll tell you how big it was. You ready? Last time Seneca beat Wilmington, you'd have to go back to week 8 of 2001. That's the last time.
Well,
that's a long time ago.
I will say this, with Seneca, they kind of arrived on the scene last year.
Yes.
Let's just call it how it is, and they had kind of gone through some down years, and then they kind of arrived on the scene. They kind of came into the dance, and then they got a nice piece of humble pie in the dance. They got beat up in the dance there once they kind of advanced a little bit. And I think this game right here, this could be kind of one of those games you look back and you're like, hey, this is a kind of one of those statement games, because that provides a little bit of energy and a little bit of, swagger to your kids. And, I know it's early in the season, but I think it sends a clear message to everybody in that area that Seneca's for real. Because I think anytime you beat a Wilmington team, but Coach Jeff, you're doing something pretty good.
So again, Terry Maxwell, the head coach at Seneca, just a huge win. And Matt, I don't know if other people know, but I'm on a media committee that nominates Coach of the Week and Player of the Week for the Chicago Bears. Head coach of Seneca was my nominee this week. Just a huge win, and hopefully he can bring that award home. That award's announced every. I'm sorry, I think it said Maxwell. Terry Maxwell is the head coach of Seneca. So hopefully he can win the Bears award, which would be awesome. But again, well-deserved and just an absolutely huge win for the Irish out of Seneca. So again, Seneca moving up all the way to number 4. Bismarck heading at 5. We mentioned Decatur St. Teresa. Matt with a loss to an out-of-state opponent from Linton, Stockton, Indiana, 35-20. I don't know anything about them. I'm guessing you probably don't know anything about them, but the one thing I can tell you, they must be pretty good if they beat St. Teresa.
Well, I think with St. Teresa and Coach Britt Miller, he takes over for Mark Ramsey. It's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for Britt. Britt was one of my favorite football players of watching at Illinois. He was small in stature, but he brought the heat. They called him Britt the Hit for a reason. He was not afraid to stick his nose in there. He was a starting linebacker for the 2005 Illinois Rose Bowl team. He did some great things, with Coach Welder down at Monticello. And then, opportunities led him to St. Teresa, coach with a legendary coach. The bottom line is they're an independent, and they're going to be playing in some tough teams. They got some games down the road where they play Tolono Unity, Belleville Altoff. There's a team by the name of Lena Winslow that's going to come down on a Saturday and play them.
Yeah.
This is no rest for the weary here for Britt Miller. But if there's one guy that can get this done, I think it's him. But they lost some players from last year. So sometimes in these situations, the St. Teresa's, the Belleville Altoffs, the St. Bede's, the Academies, what have you, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they grow and develop. It's week 1. Let's just move on to week 2.
Yeah. And again, so obviously that changes the ranking for sure. Nashville, they remain in the poll. They are number 7. Actually, number 6. Number 7 is Marion Central Catholic. And Matt, we talked a little bit about the Hurricanes last week. They are in the brand new Chicagoland Christian Conference. Played a little team called Richmond Burton. You might have heard of them. So they took a loss what was the final? I had the final here a minute ago. They took a loss 41-29 to Richmond Burton. Again, no shame in that game. And but again, we mentioned Marion Central Catholic's a team to watch out for. But like some others that will cover as we move forward, their schedule is brutal, and they play some really tough teams. And if they do get to 5 wins and get into 2A, they could be a dangerous team. But Matt, as we said, they've got to get there first.
Yeah. Another game that I'd like to cover, I don't know if this is 2A or 3A. You talked about Sterling Newman. Did they get votes in 2A?
Sterling Newman, they're actually in 1A.
In 1A. I just wanted to go back to that real quick because they're kind of a border, it's kind of between 1A and 2A. And they took on Taylor Ridge Rockridge. I just wanted to say that came down to the last play of the game. That was, and my best man at my wedding, Tom Hassan, like to send a shout out to Taylor Ridge Rockridge and all those guys, Sam Graves, all those guys. Tom Hassan was a defensive coordinator for Coach Welder at Aledo for all those years. And he told me, in so many words, just a scrappy Sterling Newman team, and a heartbreaker for Taylor Ridge Rockridge. You lose on the last play of the game. It just came right down to it. So I think any of those teams, Marion Central Catholic, St. Bede Academy, Sterling Newman, you got to watch out for them. That they're going to be battle tested week in, week out. They're going to go through the gauntlet every week. And so we'll see how they mature and grow as the year goes on.
And then finishing out the top 10, Bloomington Central Catholic moves up 1 spot from 10 to 9. And we mentioned Taylor Ridge Rockridge. They unfortunately lose to Sterling Newman, drop from number 3 down to number 10, but they do remain in the poll. Also receiving votes in 2A, Johnson City, Knoxville, El Paso Gridley, Breeze Mater Dei, Pana, Shelbyville, and Carmel White County. So those are your teams that either made it in the top 10 or were certainly under consideration in Class 2A.
Two thoughts on that. Just want to tell you, Knoxville, a team to watch out for. I always talk about just their grittiness and how they beat a really tough Elmwood Brimfield team. And then watch out for El Paso. They got the left-handed quarterback that I'll talk about later. And it's they come out of the HOIC. So watch out for El Paso. The Titans could be a team to watch out for.
All right, moving on to Class 3A. These are the AP Week 2 top 10 poll. Princeton moves up a spot from 2 to 1, so Princeton is currently the number 1 team. Byron drops 1 spot, so again, just a handful of votes separating them. That's the difference there. So Byron drops from 1 to 2. Princeton moves up from 2 to 1. A little flip flop as well. Tolono Unity actually moves up from 4 to 3. Williamsville drops down from 3 to 4 following this. Montini moves up a little bit from 7 to 5. Reed Custer remains at 6. 7. Olympia moves up. They are in the 7th spot. They move up from 10. Matt, 2 losses in the poll. I'm sorry. Eureka. All right, 2 teams are in. Eureka's in with a 1-0 record. They are at number 7. And I'm sorry, they're at number 7. My bad. Wilmington, we mentioned the Wildcats with a loss to Seneca. They dropped from 5 to 9. And St. Joe Ogden, no surprise. You knew they'd find their way back into the poll eventually. They make it in at number 10. St. Joe Ogden had a 40-14 win over Monticello. Eureka with a 49-6 win over Canton. That's a good win for both teams. Eureka in particular beating a considerably larger school in Canton. So that's a really nice win for them. And as we talked about St. Joe Ogden, nice win over Monticello as well.
Well, luckily I've done a little bit of research. I haven't done a lot, but I can just tell you this, one of my best friends is Coach Welder. He's helped me in all phases of life. And, he just told me that St. Joe was just a little bit better, and I think Monticello had a few turnovers. St. Joe kind of capitalized on that. It sets up for an incredible showdown here in week 2. You're going to have a game at Tolona Unity. I call it the cathedral in the country. Scott Hamilton has a wonderful, wonderful football team. They're led by Dane Eisenberger, a sophomore. They're going to be awfully tough to beat. Brian Skinner, he'll flat out tell you, they're not the biggest team, but they're athletic, they're fast, they play hard, and he wanted to send a message to Monticello early in that game that they were going to be physical and be there at the point of attack and get 11 hats to the ball. They did that. It sets up a wonderful, wonderful showdown in week 2 early. So we'll kind of keep our ears out on that. And Coach Tim, I'm just going to tell you this right now. You kind of called it out. You said, watch out for this Eureka team. And that's a team that their facilities have gotten better. Their play has gotten better. Yeah. And they went over, they beat a Canton team. And I know Canton's a little bit better, a little bit bigger, but Canton has really, really young, and Nick Wright is. They are. Yep. Nick Wright's in a process of trying to build that program. They might be a year away, but make no mistake about it. I think Eureka is going to be one of the top teams. Them and Tri-Valley are going to be the top 2 dogs in the HOIC. And so I promise our viewers, that I'm going to do some research on Eureka because, from the preseason talk, from just watching various news channels and
keep hearing big. Everyone says
good. Big. They're big. They're athletic and they're fast. And they've had a system that's been in place for a while. So they're going to be a team to kind of watch out for.
So the teams that were knocked out last week from week 1, the previous number 6 ranked Prairie Central, as we mentioned, lost to Tolona Unity 27-12. And then number 8 was Stillman Valley. Stillman lost to Dixon. Again, another tough opponent. Lost to Dixon 28-14. So they're out. Others receiving votes: Genoa Kingston, Prairie Central, Dupec, Greenville, Mount Carmel, Illinois, the Golden Aces, Stillman Valley, and Benton.
A couple other points in 3A. I'll just say this, Eric Lyons, I've talked to him. Just like to send a shout out to all the people at Olympia. Miss you guys. I hope they do well this year. They're going to have, an interesting trip here in week 2. They got to go clear across the state to Pittsfield. Pittsfield's probably not nearly as good as Olympia, but you still got to take this long trip. Things are setting up for the week 3 showdown with Athens. I mean, let's just call it how it is. Chase Whitweiler is out for another week with a sore shoulder. And then, Braden Nystrom, a defensive end, outside linebacker, he was out in week 1. He'll be back in week 2. Eric's trying to keep these guys level-headed. This is the first time in a long, long time the Olympia has been ranked, and they're ranked 10th. Now, they beat the snot out of someone in week 2. They might move up to a little bit more here in week 3, and so he's just trying to keep them level-headed. Talked to Jeff Boyer at Byron. His team's doing real good. Had a couple of pick 6 on the defensive side of the ball, and they obviously set the tone. So, we'll see how things go. I'd like to say also, too, that Prairie Central, again, continue our thoughts and prayers for them. They came out of the game. They came out of the came out of the gates really running hard. They scored the first touchdown of that game, and that was another game that was affected by and impacted by weather. They called that game short with like about 3 minutes left in the game. Both coaches agreed it was hurricane type weather, but Prairie Central is going to be all right. But it'll be really interesting to see what happens on Illini Prairie with Tolona Union and St. Joe. So that's kind of the talk of the town down here in our area, and we'll just see how it all unfolds.
There you go. All right, Matt, we're going to give you a second there to catch your breath, and we're going to move on to 4A. Again, these are the Class 4A Week 2 polls according to the Associated Press. So we'll start at number 1. Well, it looks like Derek Leonard got more delegates out because they found a way to move up from 2 to 1. So they are the number 1 team in Class 4A this week in AP. IC Immaculate Conception, IC Catholic Prep drops from 1 to 2. Of course, both had very strong wins, going away wins for sure. And to be fair, honestly, Matt, I thought Rochester had a really solid win against a really good team. So that's a nice win for Derek and his guys. Number 3, Morris. Morris moves up from 4 to 3. Morris all over Coal City. Coal City is actually out this week. They were number 8 previously. Morris won that game 43-3. So again, I know the fans want to see that game continue, but you just hope, Matt, that it gets a little more closer and a little more competitive. Otherwise, you know how those things go. After a while, it's only going to last so long before the coaches decide to do something different.
Yeah, traditions are traditions, and everybody loves their rivalry games and what have you. But at the time, there comes a time and a place, where you have to just kind of think about, what's best for the game,
Right.
what's going to happen, and everybody has to make those decisions.Hether it's the ADs, the principals, football coaches, staff, what have you. Sometimes change is good, and that's all I can say. You're seeing it on the college level. We have these traditions. And sometimes these traditions are going to go bye-bye because now we have conference realignment. And I'm kind of rambling here on my whole concept on this, but I think sometimes we just have to embrace that there has to be change. It's going to happen.
Yep, there's no doubt. It's has happened, is going to continue to develop, and it's really all over the state. It's more than just one area or 2 areas. The whole statewide, we're going to continue to see conference shakeups and what have you as we move along here. Class 4A, again, we're going through the top 10 week 2 according to the Associated Press. Number 4 is Richmond Burton. Number 5 is Rockford Boylan. Number 6 is Rochelle. Wheaton Academy is at number 7. Number 8 is Mount Zion. Number 9, Carterville. And as we mentioned, Coal City out this week. In for Coal City are Murfreesboro. So Murfreesboro gets in at number 10. As far as others receiving votes in 4A, Normal U High, Cahokia, Macomb, Geneseo, Breeze Central, St. Lawrence, Heron, and Chicago De La Salle, the mighty Meteors from De La Salle with a nice week 1 win. So there you go, Matt, in 4A. Not a whole lot of shaking, not a whole lot of changes, but again, it's a very, very stacked conference. You look at that very top part of this top 10, there are some really good teams, Matt, that I don't see losing a whole lot of games during the regular season.
Well, I think you said it best. I mean, I think, Peoria Central's good. Coach Thornton is good.
Yeah.
And for Derek to go in there and send a message, I mean, I think it just,
Yep.
Derek might be coaching and doing all this with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder because it's been a while since that standard's kind of been down. I'm not saying the standard's down, but it hasn't been up to where they want it. And where they want it is they want to hoist a trophy because they're used to hoisting trophies, first place trophies. And so interesting. They sent a message there real quick. I think Normal U High is a kind of a sleeper team. Brody Walworth is the coach there, and he coached at Pleasant Plains. If you can remember Pleasant Plains, 1 year in 3A, they took on IC. And going into that game, everybody knew it was, when was the Titanic going to sink? Well, Brody kept that thing with Band-Aids and barbed wire for about 3 quarters, and then it finally did kind of falter. But he's a good football coach. Normal U High, watch for them to win some games this year. Again, like to just send a shout out to Patrick on there at Mount Zion. I mean, he did a great job. He's got some players, and they're continuing to do the things that they do well. But like you said, I think for the most part, things are going to stay how they are, and I think 4A is going to take a little time to kind of formulate and kind of create its own identity.
Just going to stick my toe in the 5A water here just for a second. Was there any more of a surprising score than normal community over Sacred Heart Griffin?
No. And well, I guess the fact that game was up here at normal community, maybe.
Yep.
But I was, it's going to be really interesting too, and I know 5A is not my genre. I'm not supposed to talk about that. But it'll be really interesting.
You talk about anything you want to, big boy.
I know, but hey, listen, they got to come down to Champaign Central. Got to take on Tim Turner and the Champaign Maroons, normal community, and they do a good job. And everybody in the normal Unit 5 area, from Normal West to to normal community to Bloomington High School had a big win. Kudos to all those teams, and so normal community, that's a little feather that they can put in their hat because they beat one of the most storied football programs in the state of Illinois.
Right.
And I think Coach will get things going at Sacred Heart Griffith. I do.
John Allison's a hell of a coach. He's run that defense. He's run that offense for a while at Sacred Heart. I think everyone knew going in, and we talked about this in the preseason, and I saw Sacred Heart this summer, and I mentioned it in my report over the summer. It's a very young team. It's a very young team and a senior group that, a handful of guys played. But, Matt, that Sacred Heart team the last 2-3 years had that group of seniors that finally graduated, and all those guys moved up. And you paid the price, and you saw what happened. You pulled multiple state titles in with that class. It has to happen. And they're a young team. You go up against a bigger team in class. They hand it to you fine. You go back to work, and I'm telling you, Sacred Heart's going to find their way into the playoffs, and probably by week 9, no one will want to face them. So.
Well, if I could send just a little bit of a shout-out to my –
Shout-out. Yeah, more shout-outs,
buddy. Shout-outs. Okay, I got you. That was one of the things, too, like last year was a lot of fun for me to be at the state championship games. I'm lucky that I'm able to do this, be there because of you, the IHSA. I love being there. But one of the things that I did was I showed my son, I introduced him to Kenny Leonard, and I showed him, too, like when Sacred Heart Griffith walked out into the stadium to take on Providence in that state championship game, my son was literally looking at me. He's like, Dad, this isn't like it was this morning or this afternoon. And the maturity level of Sacred Heart Griffith that they had last year, they were old. They were older. Yeah. They were mature. They had seniors. And when you start out and you lose that, it takes time. And it's not how you start. It's how you grow up and you mature. Because the good thing, any good coach will tell you, the good thing about freshmen and sophomores and juniors is they become sophomores, juniors, and seniors, as the year goes on. So we don't need to worry about Sacred Heart Griffith. They'll be fine. They'll bounce back. Yeah, no doubt about it. And again, I want to mention, and I'll get more details and we'll get more into depth. The book came out with Derek Leonard and Kenny Leonard. Victorious is the name of it. I will have more details. I know I spoke to Derek early in the week. We're trying to line something up, either an interview or I'll have something, or we might have something. I might try to get one of them on this. Definitely want to help those guys promote that book, written by one of the local sports writers in the Springfield area. So we will definitely hear from the Leonards, hopefully, regarding that and try to help them sell some books. Well, if there's anything I can do, I'll do it because, again, I'm kind of repeating my stories here. But, Derek Leonard doesn't need to talk to me 48 hours before a big game against his dad in a Leonard Bowl and talk to me. But he did. And did talk to me for 53 minutes and kind of give me a lowdown about 2 years ago. Like, Matt, my dad's getting a little bit older and it's probably coming to an end. Now, he gave me a lot of insight just to talk to me and to help me. And then of course, Coach Ken, he's just always been nice to me, for my days at Fisher, working in the Shriners game with all those guys. Kenny just treated me like just a wonderful person that he is. And so I just tip my hat off to them. They're great for high school football. Yep. They're great for the state of Illinois, and anything we can do to help them promote that, I think we should do that. Yeah, we definitely will. So that will happen. Hopefully we'll get that done sooner rather than later. But definitely going to work on that for sure.
Matt, we'll go through 8A, and again for 8A, I gladly and happily use the NUICfootball.com. Go visit those guys. Great coverage. They do a fantastic job. So again, I use their 8-man top 10. So their 8-man top 10 this week after week 2 with one week of the season in the book. Amboy at number 1, Polo at 2, Milledgeville at 3, St. Thomas More at 4, Ridgewood at 5, South Beloit at 6, West Prairie at 7, Flanagan, Cornell, Woodland at 8, Martinsville at 9, and West Central, despite the loss, they remain in the poll at number 10. Others receiving votes were Milford, Cissna Park outside of the greater Kankakee area, Hiawatha also getting votes, as well as BPC and Orangeville. So there's the top 10, Matt, in 8-man.
Well, like to just say hello and tell Jim Morrow at South Beloit and the Sobos, good job, fellas. And now is your time to be on the EDGYTIM, Matt Leng, Third and Leng podcast, because here we go. The Sobos are for real, EDGYTIM. They're a good football team. Quarterback Caden Myers is a real deal, and the tight end Des Hampton is a really solid football player. They got really productive players. They're not really great in size, but we talked about this whole 8-man concept, and ever since Jim Morrow's been there, here's where their numbers have been at. In year 1, they were at 22. Year 2, they were at 28 players. Here he is in year 3. They're at 40 players.
Nice.
And if you ask the who's who in 8-man, they will tell you they like the Sobos and they like Jim Morrow. He has a very kind of keen, slow approach to how he teaches it. A great English teacher over at McChesney Park, Harlem. I coached with him for 1 year in the early 2000s.
Known his name for years in the Rockford area. A lot of the bigger schools
I'm telling you, he's the all-time winningest coach at Rockford at Harlem High School. Awesome. He learned under the great Brian Benning, who won a state championship in 1989.
Brian well. Yep.
Brian's one of my mentors. Jim is one of my mentors. Jim Morrow is one of my mentors. And you can ask anybody from Ted at Polo to Jason Kirby. Jim Morrow knows his stuff. Watch out for the Sobos. Pat Elder had a big win too. And I know there's a lot of teams that think that Ridgewood could be a really good team this year. So
what do you think? Should we get Jim Morrow on the show?
I can make that happen for you.
Yeah, let's do that, because number one, it's from an interesting area in the state that you have some terrific 1A football obviously going on there already.
Yeah.
How does 8-man fit into that landscape? Yeah. Is it fitting into the landscape? And Jim's got obviously a long resume of football, and I think can bring a lot. So yeah, let's try to plug him in.
I will get on that, and without saying too much, South Beloit's had some good football in the past, but they've also had some downtimes.
Right.
They have won a state championship, and we'll just keep it at that. We'll talk about it because it's one of my favorite stories in terms of talking about high school football on the landscape of it. Like, where's South Beloit? Oh, it's all the way up there.
You can't go any further north than South Beloit.
North. Believe me, good football. We'll talk about it.
Yep, know it very well. Actually, when the daughter was playing softball at Platteville, they used to play Beloit College once a year in a non-conference. So used to go up there and watch all the time. So very familiar with it. So
back 20 years ago, when I lived by the clock tower and I drove up there, I thought I was going to paradise, because you know what South Beloit had? They had a super Walmart. Whoop-de-doo.
There you go. Excellent. All right. So we covered the week 1. We mentioned some games to watch week 2. Couple of items I want to get to. One that popped in front of me today, and I'm going to try to find a news story on it. Matt, we talked about this a little bit last week, and I had mentioned some of the talks that I had with coaches throughout the state and different levels throughout the state over Yeah, over the summer, and one of the things that was mentioned, and unfortunately, let me check one more place to see if I can find this. We talked about numbers, and I know that you mentioned earlier in the show about one of the schools having problems with numbers, and it's still happening. Don't get me wrong. I'm still talking to the occasional one-off coach that tells me that, I just found it. So that they're still having some issues with their numbers. So it's not been resolved anywhere close to it. But I talked about the feedback from the coaches had been their numbers had either subsided or they've increased, which is great. But it's saying that, but it's actually seeing it in black and white changes it. And we got that today from the IHSA. They forwarded along a press release from NFHS. No, not the bad video company, the actual NFHS. I'm joking. High school sports participation continues to rebound towards pre-pandemic levels. Basically, a whole bunch of numbers that were thrown at you. Participation in the state of Illinois for football is up 6%. And that's fantastic. That's a great increase in numbers. It again shows hopefully we've bottomed out and now we're starting to trend higher. And I thought it was great news to see.
Well, I think if you were to analyze this whole thing, I still think it's kind of funny. Like, I'm just going to get a little sappy and philosophical here.
No, not you.
Okay, yeah. But I think, we are just now, and we're probably still a ways away, but I think we're just now kind of at that area, at that level, that time where we're we're trying to overcome and really beat and defeat the whole pandemic thing.
Yeah.
I think we're getting close to being back to normalcy. And the reason I say that is I was at a volleyball game last night. I was at Tolono Unity. I was watching my daughter play Champaign Central against Tolono Unity. They had a freshman game, they had a JV game, and they had a varsity game. And the whole gym was packed, and there were a lot of volleyball players.
Yep.
A lot of volleyball players. And I just think that now that we've kind of gotten over this, people are wanting to get more involved with things to enrich their academic process. And I know that sounds way, way too serious, but I think, I was amazed last night. I just seen people shaking hands and stuff like that and thinking, we weren't doing that a while ago because we were wearing masks and we were having to sit in spots. And I just think it's over. And I think people are ready. And I think that's where we're at. In terms of the whole thing with football, I don't know how that goes. I don't know why that fluctuates and goes up and down. I think a lot of it has to do with the pandemic.
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind. No doubt.
I also think just because of where the game is at in terms of the popularity, like I like week 0 football for college football, but I didn't watch a lick of it last week.
No,
this week I'm watching it, and I'm going to the 6:30 game with Toledo and Illinois. Like, everybody's ready for football to start. And then when the NFL starts on Sunday night, it gets really crazy, So I think everybody's ready for this to all happen. If that makes any sense.
It does. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I agree. I think a big part of those participation numbers being down, first of all, you're going to have swing in the amount of kids in every class. It's going to happen. Yeah. You're going to have birthing zoop booms, and then they're going to kind of fall off and decline a little bit. So that's natural. That always happens. But, football had taken a left cross, a right hook, a body blow, a folding chair smashed over the head. I mean, and the
rock elbow
right off the rope. We were really getting battered there for a while. The whole concussion deal, it was a lot, and we really got bloodied and beat up a little bit. But again, I think what worked and what succeeded was that people stuck to safety and safety first, and we're doing everything we can as a sport and everything the coaches could do to do things the right way and to do things the safe way and to be able to adjust to what changed and what needed to change. I also think you're starting to see equipment catch up. I think the helmets are better now than they've been in a long time. I think you're seeing less and less issues with that. Now, am I saying is it going to go away? No, it's never going to go away. It's still a violent sport. It's still a collision sport. That is going to happen. But I think everything combined with, the game seems like it's as safe now than it's been in a long time. I think parents are tired of their kids sitting at home. They want them out. They want them active. Go do something. Football, of course, Matt, and I hope this never changes, and I've said this for a long time. Football being one of the few sports left these days where you can start as a freshman and catch up.
Sure.
You don't see that in a lot of sports. A lot of sports, you're not able to do that. You got to be playing it from 10U all the way up. But I think football, thank God, is still that sport that can take the kid off the bus as a freshman and say, look, we're going to work you. We're going to show you how to do it. You're going to learn how to do it right. That, I think, is still a big, important win for football when it comes to drawing kids and drawing participation. And I think it's kind of combining. And so far, the numbers have proven out something's working.
Well, I will say this. Okay, a lot of thoughts on that, and I'll just try to keep it really quick. I can tell you this. I think because of the pandemic, and if I'm being politically incorrect, I'm sorry, but I think there's just a lot of people, adults also, everybody, males, females, everybody got a little bit fat and lazy. And everybody got interested in not doing anything. And now people are wanting to do things. And I can tell you this comes from a principal, my former defensive coordinator, one of my best friends, John Kelly, who, by the way, Fisher now has 34 kids out for football.
Awesome. Great.
He battled and fought Dakota hard for a while. And he told me, he's like, you know what, Matt? The bottom line is we're just trying to get kids to understand and realize football's cool.
Yeah.
It's a cool thing.
It is.
It's a cool thing because the thing that you're talking about in terms of that freshman getting off the bus, that's called player development. That's called getting better. And I think kids want to get better because they're watching the game, but you know what? It takes a little bit of work. That is the X factor in football. You do have to work at it.
Yep.
You're not going to get anywhere just sitting there and not going through. You can't go through the motions. You got to work at it. And I think when you see player development and then you're out there to run around and you're confident, you're strong, you're faster, and you're bigger, and you're stronger, then it gets really cool. And it gets really cool from the Fishers of the world all the way to Loyola Academy and, East St. Louis and all those places.
And we'll get off this and we'll finish what we said we were going to finish with. But and by all means, I think another thing that kind of developed, that I saw developing more than we've seen in the past during the pandemic, and then right immediately after the pandemic, coaches getting creative, coaches getting together and exchanging ideas and saying, well, what are you doing to get kids interested? What are you doing to maybe change things up and to make it more fun for them and to make it more active for them where they want to come? And you see more grade school off-season 7-on-7s. You see more at least in my area, you're seeing more off-season football camps, like a one-off football camp. Just getting those kids, and even the flag stuff that they're doing, a lot of flag 7-on-7 teams to grade schools. At least you're getting them involved and you're putting that taste of football to them. And I think in a lot of districts that working, Matt, that has to continue as a sport. We have to continue to get creative and to find ways to continue to attract kids.
Yeah. And you know what? You can, and the great Kevin Crandall at Rochelle High School said it the best. There's a different way to skin the cat because you can run the wing tee at Arcola and you can go up to Lena Winslow and run the wing tee. But you know what? You can go to Chicago Mount Carmel, and I watched them play Saturday night, and I watched the kid go in orbit motion in the backfield like Steve Sarkisian's taught at Alabama, and it worked just fine.
Yep.
And you know what? You go over to Quincy, they're doing some of that stuff. You go to Danville, everywhere. Everybody's doing something different because they like the game, and it's fun, and it is cool. And I think kids are seeing that it's cool, and they want to be a part of it.
All right, one last thing. We both happened to find our way to Hancock Stadium Saturday night for our friends at East St. Louis took on Chicago Mount Carmel. Matt, I thought it was everything we had hoped for going into it. It was a good crowd. It was a great atmosphere. It was two incredibly fast, incredibly athletic teams that obviously did not like each other. That was evident from very early on in the game. These two were out to get each other. They were out. Someone's coming away with a win, and you're going to feel it the next day. And great game. You know, Mount Carmel gets that late second half lead. East St. Louis comes fighting right back. Final 36-33 Mount Carmel. I think if you were in the stands, I think everyone I talked to, and I ran into I talked to a lot of people on both sides. I went to the tailgate for East St. Louis. I went to the tailgate for Mount Carmel. And the feedback was a lot of these people hadn't been down there since the state finals used to be held down there.
Since the Bob Shannon years.
Shocked at what they saw, happily shocked at what they saw, and said, you know what, you're right. They have changed a lot down here, and a lot has changed.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this place went from kind of wide open to being kind of intimate. And Matt, it on the floor, on the field, it sound and this was only one half of the bleachers.
Yeah.
It sounded great, and it felt great. And the players and the coaches and everyone said, "Hey, this was a great atmosphere." I hope we continue to do that. I mean, obviously, it's a great warm up for the state finals in ISU. As I've said many times, I think they're going to do a great job. And as far as those week one games, man, you know, East St. Louis, and I give Darren Suckett and everyone at East St. Louis credit because they've been doing this for a long time. This weekend, this Saturday, is the Flyers Scholars Classic. They do this every year. They have 3 or 4 different games featuring in-state and out-of-state opponents. East St. Louis is playing St. Francis Baltimore, which is a national power. Glenbard West is traveling down. They're taking on DeSmet. So, again, great football. It's just a day-long jamboree. And what I would love to see someday, I would love to see, I don't know, Lena Winslow take on, I don't know, think of someone like a power team that in like 2A that they wouldn't run into, or 3A, and do that and have 3 or 4 games, get a small school involved and let them play a different opponent, a really good opponent, and have 3 or 4 of those games and just make a day of it. Because, Matt, I'm telling you, if you get the right place and you get the right matchups, it could be a big, big deal and a lot of fun.
Well, I had a blast, you know, and I won't ramble too much, but, you know, to meet Dana Howard, who was one of the most decorated linebackers before played at Illinois, I got to see him. I introduced my son to Darren Sunkett. I met Darren for the first time this past coaching clinic, joked around with him a little bit. Very, very, very nice guy. Put his arm around me, put his arm around my kid, took a picture. The atmosphere was great. And I'll just piggyback off this whole thing. You get the right matchup in 2A, 3A, 4A on that Friday after Thanksgiving, that place is going to be bonkers bananas. You get the right matchup in 3A and 4A with more population, bigger schools. It's going to be wonderful. It's the perfect venue for high school football. It's tighter in a box. It's more compacted than it ever has been. And it's just going to be great. I thought Illinois State did a nice job. Just back to that game, I thought there was some ferocious hitting and some great athleticism from kids that are going to Purdue, to Wisconsin. Again, that's not my wheelhouse. That's your wheelhouse. We know who those kids are, but that was a lot of fun. That was big-time football. Big-time football.
The one thing I do, we mentioned getting the small schools involved, the small enrollment schools involved. I would put that game or games smack dab in the middle between 2 larger enrollment schools. So we are going to force a larger crowd to watch small school football at that event.
Absolutely.
If it was up to me. Because I'm tired of seeing 1A play at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Give them prime time. Give them 4 o'clock for a one-off. Let them be seen by some bigger school fans, and let them watch what they can see in small school football. And I guarantee you, those fans will learn to appreciate it a lot more than they do. Guarantee it.
No,
so we'll see. We have dreams, Matt Leng. We have
dreams.
But
we'll talk more about that later. But I just want to say I'm glad I was there. That got my juices flowing. I sat with Andy Romine and Lenny Semeni from Tuscola with my son, and it got cool. It was kind of cool. It was cooler temperatures.
It was. It definitely cooled down a little bit. So.
And here's the one variable that's going to stay the same on all these stadiums, ladies and gentlemen. And it'll get that way in November. But it even happened in August there on that Saturday night. And that wind, when it starts tunneling, it's the same way in Northern, same way in Champaign. Lo and behold, in normal, it's not normal. It can get a little windy.
There's no place more windy on earth than Northern Illinois University. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
None. But all right. Well, hey, I think that's going to wrap it up this week. We'll be back next week. Maybe like we said, we'll work on it. We'll try to drag a guest in next week and talk a little something. Somebody new. We'll figure it out. Matt and I'll get it squared away. So again, for Matt Leng, I'm EDGYTIM. Thanks for watching, everybody. We appreciate you. Got any thoughts, any suggestions? You could hit us on social media. Hit me on social media. Put it in the comments on the YouTube page as well. It's always, and make sure you're subscribing and liking. We love that. We love to build up those numbers. So again, that'll do it this week for week 2. For Matt Leng, I'm EDGYTIM. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week and go watch a football game, will you?